Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls. This is your host Kieran, and this is the show. Welcome to the Abyss. So, in this particular episode, I am going to slightly take a different course of action from the traditional videos you guys are probably used to seeing from me. There will be more episodes in relation to the Irish and wider world mythological series. I am working on them at the moment, but I wanted to put this particular theory out there because for the last while I have tried to get this paper peer reviewed. Now, I have had this theory checked out by fellow engineer friends, and they've informed me that this idea is totally plausible. Even my own research is like, yeah, this can work and this probably will work. But unfortunately, to get something like this peer reviewed, it would be quite difficult because unfortunately for us mainstream historians and archaeology do not believe the pyramids are anything but tombs. Anything else falls into pseudo history, pseudo archaeology, pseudo as the back of the B. But I have encountered other issues around my other theories in regards to historians and archaeologists. They, no matter what evidence I've put forward in regards to the other videos, they've flat out just refused to accept it. They will not accept anything that is not in the books, written in history books. So this is why I've decided to publicly post the theory so people can make up their own minds on it essentially. So without further ado, I will carry on to the next slide. The paper's title is called Looking to the Past for Future Innovation, the Great Pyramid, Tesla, the Ancients and the Human Brain. So the ultimate goal of this paper is to revisit the engineering behind the Great Pyramid, to ascertain its true function by going back to basics in regard to the material used in its construction, why they built it in the way they did, relating back to Tesla's work, modern electrical components, and how they use it as an energy source. We will also be examining clues left to us by the ancients in the form of stone engravings and other curiosities from the ancient world, and how they ultimately help us solve this mystery once and for all. This paper intends to investigate the means by which to use a presently untapped energy source, the Earth itself, utilising inventions given to us by Nikola Tesla and the last of the seven wonders, and the last of the wonders of the world, the Great Pyramid. We will examine the most up-to-date information related to the pyramid and how its base function is a steam-powered crystal oscillator using the earth as a medium for our pyramid to produce hydrogen. Now, I know anyone looking at this is probably going to think this is crazy, but please stick with me and follow my line of thinking. This is going to be explained over the next number of slides, and take from it what you will. So, the key part I've seen in regards to other pyramid theories, I've observed quite a lot of them, but for the pyramid or any of the pyramids that they're saying to generate electricity or generate power or whatever, I observed that each of these theories, as good as that they are, they, they're not getting the basics. So I will explain the basics as I go through that paper, and hopefully you guys understand what I'm talking about. But one of the key parts, or one of the key missing pieces of the Great Pyramid is, if you look at figure one there, it's a crystal oscillator. So that's a crystal oscillator symbol from an electrical diagram legend, okay? So it's a symbol that represents an oscillator. So they operate on the principle of inverse piezoelectric effect in which alternating voltage applied across the crystal surface causes it to vibrate at its natural frequency. It's these vibrations which eventually get converted into oscillations. So if you go back to the first or second paragraph where I say about modern electrical components, okay, all electrical components are based off just essentially voltage being able to transfer through via crystals or conductors, okay? So the likes of an example of a crystal oscillator would be used in digital time clocks, A If you have a quartz watch or quartz battery watch, that is essentially a stone or a crystal or a quartz crystal that in the watch mechanism is being struck, and that generates a voltage, which is the piezoelectric effect. Because piezoelectric effect means you mechanically stress the crystal to generate a charge. But this will be explained as it go along, okay? But just remember, crystal oscillator. That's the key missing part of the pyramid, okay? So, folks, please feel free to pause the video at any stage and read through what is written on the paper. But I will also do a thread and submit a file where people can actually download and read the paper, or just read the paper via thread on Twitter or whatever. So you can do what you want there. But just going back to the paper itself, so what I said in the previous slide about other theories is what they're missing, what the basics that they're missing. So the reason I say this is because there is electricity in the atmosphere already. We can't use it here because we are at ground, we are at the massive Earth, so we are at there's no potential difference here, so we're at zero. But the atmosphere itself has 400,000 volts. So if you read the first paragraph there under the heading atmospheric electricity, Earth is essentially a giant magnet and is composed of an ocean of molten iron at its core and generates a magnetic field. The field streams out of the north magnetic poles around the planet and returns to the south magnetic pole, behaving like an electrical circuit. Its electromagnetic field surrounds and protects all living things with a natural frequency pulsation of 7.83 hertz on average, the so-called Schumann resonance. So we know in the atmosphere there's electricity, or charge rather, positively charged electrons, and then we know the Earth is a giant magnet. So we have a magnetic field and we have voltage, okay? So for the pyramid to work, it doesn't need to generate voltage and it doesn't need to generate a magnetic field because it's already existing. So my argument that I put forward is if there's voltage there, there's current there. The pyramid itself doesn't need to generate anything. It just needs to harness the energy that is there. You know what I mean? So to give you an explanation of how electric atmospheric electricity works is under that the electrical gradient of the atmosphere you can see on an ordinary day over flat desert, country or oversea. As one goes upwards from the surface of the ground or the top of the water, the electrical potential increases by about 100 volts per meter, 33 volts per foot. Thus, there is a vertical electric field of 100 volts per meter in the air. So the total potential difference from the surface of the Earth to the top of the atmosphere is approximately 400,000 volts. So there is a little calculation for voltage at the top of the pyramid. So the initial height of the pyramid with its capstone and its casing stones was 146.5 meters. Its present height without all that is 138 meters. So based off the example above, that little calculation, so we know the height and we know there's a potential difference. So we go the total potential difference at the top of the pyramid, old and when it is existing, is 14,650 to 13,850 volts. So we know there's electricity there, but how do we know it's going to be sitting at the top of the pyramid? So as you can see in the next paragraph there, climbing to the top of the Great Pyramid is now illegal. But in the 1800s, a British inventor named Sir William Siemens made it to the flat settled top at the Great Pyramid of Giza. Upon reaching the summit, one of his guides remarked that where he raised his hand with his fingers, spread his ears, and picked up a shrill ringing noise, Siemens then raised the forefinger and felt the prickling sensation emanating from the tip and spreading through his hand. Not long after, the inventor went to quench his thirst with a celebratory sip of wine and received an electrical shock from his lips touching the bottle. Siemens thought that these occurrences were more than just a coincidence. So he moistened a piece of newspaper to wrap around his bottle of wine to create a makeshift Leyden jar where he held when he held this primitive capacitor over his head, and sparks religiously crackled and flew through the air. So a capacitor, as he says about earlier on about modern electrical components, a capacitor stores electrical charge. So it's essentially, if you wanted to, the example of using the capacitor in a circuit, if you have a single phase motor, the single phase motor can't just turn a motor, it doesn't have the potential. So what they do is they add a capacitor into the circuit to give it, it's like a hard start, to give it that kick to kick off the torque for the motor. But this guy at the top of the pyramid, he discovered this. It's actually quite interesting how he done it. So we know as fact there's charge at the top of the atmosphere, at the top of the pyramid, and this we can prove this because it's atmospheric electricity. Okay, and another example of this is storms and planes. Why don't planes fly through storms? Because lightning will strike it because it's charged. Okay. So I just want to give you a couple of definitions in relation to what I described. So voltage is U. So voltage is an electrical potential difference. It represents the pressure from an electrical circuit's power source that pushes charged electrons current through a conducting loop. What is current? Electrical current is the flow of charged particles such as electrons or ion moving through an electrical conductor or space. It is defined as the net rate of flow of electrical charge through a surface. So what is the difference between the two, as in current and voltage? Current is the rate at which electrical charge flows past a point in a circuit. Voltage, also called electromotive force or EMF, is the potential difference in charge between 2 points in an electrical field. What is current in relation to a magnetic field? So a current flowing through a wire produces magnetic field that's proportional to the amount of charge in motion. So as you can see in the previous slide, I made the point about Earth's magnetic field, and I made the point about its voltage, or the atmospheric voltage. So as you can see, it's all about conductors. Okay, so I previously said the key missing piece is an oscillator, but what do we know is in the pyramid? Is there conductors in the pyramid? The answer to that is yes. Okay, so that will be described, but I do need you to understand these terms. So we know what current is in relation to a magnetic field. We know what current is, and we know what voltage is. But to generate power, we need to induce current. So how we induce current in current is when a conductor, such as a loop of a wire or coil, moves through a magnetic field. The magnetic flux passing through it changes with time. Since the cross-sectional area of the loop is fixed, the change in flux is caused by the changing magnetic field. The change in magnetic field applies force to the free electrons in the conductor. As a result, these electrons move and produce a current inside the conductor. This current is known as induced current. And then finally, what is frequency? The frequency of cycles completed per second by an alternating quantity is known as frequency. So you need to know these terms, okay? So as you can see, there's an example of a battery and a conductor, okay? And it's coiled, so it's what it's doing there is showing that you can generate a magnetic field and then using power as a source, okay? So I've already explained this, but I just wanted to give another visual of this. So it is well known that the Earth is essentially a giant magnetic field or a battery. This magnetic field is generated from Earth's molten core. It interacts with the wider solar system and universe, protecting Earth from solar radiations and space weather. The resonance generated by this magnetic field is known as the Schumann resonance, which is said to be responsible for the regulation of life on Earth as well as weather, i.e., thunderstorms generate charge, electric charge. The magnetic field is responsible for the basis of electricity and electrical theory we use every day. Again, the frequency is 7.83 Hz and has been called the Earth's heartbeat. Progressively weaker harmonics have been measured around 14.8, 20.8, and 33.8 Hz. It is known today that the Earth's atmosphere holds an electric charge of 300,000 volts. So you can see the example is Earth's magnetic field, and then just below there is an image that's discussing the global electrical circuit. So essentially, you can see the positively charged electrons in the atmosphere, okay? And those bounce around, do their thing, create electrical charges, as in that become thunderstorms, etc., etc. So that is just a little description of what I'm trying to describe. So again, atmospheric electricity. As seen above, it has been observed that the Earth's electrical charge is generated by interaction with the wider solar system and Earth's own geomagnetic field. The positively charged ions of the atmospheric discharge to the negative ion charge of the massive Earth. As we should all know, electricity takes the path of least resistance to the Earth or ground. At ground, we sit at zero potential of the massive Earth, which is why we aren't being electrocuted as we stand. But as we climb in altitude, atmospheric electricity creates 33 volts AC per foot or 100 volts AC per meter in elevation. This is why on all buildings you have lightning protection systems, which is essentially an earth or ground bar. As buildings attract this atmospheric charge, that allows the quickest path to Earth, as well as protecting the building's electronics and in case of internal electric issues. So what an earth or ground bar is a bar that runs from the top of a building down to the ground, because that gives these charged electrons a safe path to Earth, so it doesn't strike and damage the building. It is known that there's plenty of destruction. There's a well-known cross in the Rocket Castle that's on the top of almost like a little mountain, or hill rather, and this cross was actually destroyed because a storm had damaged it a couple of hundred years ago. So this is why we need these bars, because otherwise they just destroy a building on you or just destroy any of the components within it. So an earth or ground bar is a copper bar or a copper conductor, again, that allows these positively charged electrons to the massive Earth, which is negative. Think opposites attract, okay? Likes repel, opposites attract. This is where this stuff comes from, okay? So telluric current is essentially a negative charge, or the negative pole of the magnetic field. And it's also called the earth current, natural electric current flowing beneath the surface of the Earth, generally following the direction parallel to Earth's surface. Telluric currents arise from charges moving to attain equilibrium between the regions of differing electrical potential. These differences is a potential to set up several conditions, including very low frequency electromagnetic waves in space, particularly from the magnetosphere, incident upon the Earth's surface, and moving charged masses in the atmosphere and the atmosphere, or ionosphere and the atmosphere. So, as it says, we've got charged electrons in the atmosphere. They want to go to the Earth, okay? So, as I keep saying to people, we have a magnetic field, we have voltage, okay? So, essentially, all we need to do is induce current for this theory to work. And again, this is what I mean by getting the basics right, okay? So on to the next slide. The next part we're going to discuss is what is electrolysis. So electrolysis is a process by which electrical current is passed through a substance to effect chemical change. So the chemical change is one in which the substance loses or gains electron, oxidation or reduction. The process is carried out in an electrolytic cell, an apparatus consisting of positive and negative electrodes held apart and dipped into a solution containing positively and negatively charged ions. The substance to be transformed may be the electrode, may constitute the solution, or may be dissolved in the solution. Electric current, i.e. electrons, enters through the negatively charged electrode, cathode. Components of the solution to this electrode combined with the electrons are transferred, reduced. This product can be neutral elements or new molecules. Components of the solution also travel to the other electrode or anode, give up their electrons and are transformed, oxidized to neutral elements or neutral molecules. If the substance to be transformed is the electrode, the reaction is often one in which the electrode dissolves by giving up electrons. So essentially, what is going on here? So this current is passed through a body of water. So this water will have, like, say, a lime solution or whatever in it to allow for this chemical reaction to take place. So what happens when you run current through water? It separates the the hydrogen from the water. So the water will stay there, if this makes sense. But as this charge happens, what is produced is essentially hydrogen gas and oxygen, so it's separated. So that is just a very, very basic kind of description of electrolysis. Okay. So how do we use the earth for electrolysis? So as we've observed above in the article, we know that the earth has an observable resonant frequency of 7.33 Hz to 33.8 and an electrical potential of 350 to 400,000 volts in the atmosphere. For this to work, I think we essentially need a tower to give this charge a safe, direct pathway to ground, as well as an oscillating winding current mechanism to harmonize the frequency. So the frequency is what gives a harmonized path to ground. So it syncs the voltages and the electrons, right? So the copper conductor gives it the safe path to ground. But because the different potentials in the atmosphere, you want to harmonize the frequency, okay? So you want to harmonize all these electrons in this atmosphere to bring it to ground for this effect to take place. So Nikola Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower. So that's it's a basic drawing of what was going on there in the bottom image there. He was would be his tower would be the prime example of what I'm trying to describe. So in my own opinion, Tesla wasn't trying to transmit frequency from the tower. It appears to me he was using the tower to essentially induce current. Okay. So as you go through this paper, I described the Great Pyramid such as the device. This is based off observations I have made as well as studying other pyramid researchers' work. This theory combines Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower and his steam-powered oscillator. So I use these two inventions of Tesla to reverse engineer the function of the pyramid. I know this sounds absolutely insane, but when you actually look at what components are built into the pyramid, it makes total sense what the ancients were at, regardless if anyone says there were tombs or not. So another recent study. So around the time I was looking at ideas to formulate this theory, so I reckoned, okay, the Earth has a magnetic field, the Earth has electrical potential in the atmosphere. We know there's a copper conductor in the pyramid, and the missing piece, I believe, is the oscillating mechanism. So this is all well and good, but what other proof can I say that the pyramid focuses or generates charge, or this to be a generator? So a couple of years ago, a paper was actually released, and it said that yes, the pyramid does focus electromagnetic energy. So this is a study from a few years ago. So the citations are in the actual paper itself. So based off the evidence described above, we know that there is voltage at the Great Pyramid as well as a natural resonance frequency of the Earth. Below describes a recent discovery phenomenon where the Great Pyramid focuses electromagnetic energy. So you can have a read of it there. So as you can see, an international research group has applied methods of theoretical physics to investigate the electromagnetic response of the Great Pyramid to radio waves. Scientists predicted that under resonance conditions, the pyramid can concentrate electromagnetic energy in its internal chambers and under its base. The research group plans to use these theoretical results to design nanoparticles capable of reproducing similar effects in the optimal range, such as nanoparticles may be used, for example, to develop sensors and highly efficient solar cells. The study was applied in the Journal of Applied Physics. So far, we have established that the Great Pyramid has an electrical source and can focus electromagnetic energy. But the question is now, how can we make use of this phenomenon? The next sections of the paper will describe the materials used in the design and how they pertain to the claim described in this paper, as well as the missing components, how they can be used and related to modern electrical components. So the materials of the Great Pyramid. So limestone. So around 5.5 million tons of limestone, 8,000 tons of granite, 500 tons of mortar were used in the Great Pyramid. The mighty stone formed part of an outer line, fine white polished limestone that would have been made the sides completely smooth. It was polished until it was shone. It shone so that the pyramid would have gleamed in the sun. The limestone casing blocks came from quarries 12 or 15 kilometers down from Giza. So the Great Pyramid was encased in polished white limestone blocks, which were removed and used to develop the surrounding Giza plateau. Also used limestone blocks, granite rolls, granite for the internal chambers, and more than other materials such as copper and iron. The main materials we will focus on for now is the external polished white limestone, which is a light colour, and casing stones, and the internal granite dark blocks. Okay, so what I mean here is, so thinking in terms of thermodynamics in its most basic function, light colour reflects heat slash energy, and dark colour conducts heat slash energy. Examples of this can be seen in wearing light clothes on a warm sunny day and compared to dark colours. So what I'm saying is here is the polished white, so this is in, the pyramids are in Egypt, right? Nice sunny area. So what is happening is those polished white limestone blocks were insulating the internal reaction in the chamber from the outside atmosphere, if that makes sense. So the heat and or energy was reflecting off this white casing block, okay? But there was it was protecting the internal reaction, okay? This will be described. How it did this is going to be described in a minute now. So in this instance, we can argue that polished white limestone outer casing blocks were used as an insulator, whilst the granite was used as a conductor. Similar to how an electrical immersion coil would work as a standard water cylinder. Different applications, similar logic, as in the metal encased magnesium coated metal rod, which protect the electrical element from tripping the electrical circuit to make contact with the water, allowing the reaction in the element to heat the water. So the key point about the granite within the chamber is not only the colour of the stone, is the fact that granite contains quartz. Quartz is a piezoelectric material. So field of squeeze, how piezoelectricity works to make crystals conduct electrical current. So it sounds like it's a lot to take in, but it's simple to understand. The word piezoelectric originates from the Greek word poison, which generally means to squeeze or to press. Instead of squeezing grapes to make wine, we're squeezing crystals to make an electrical current. Piezoelectricity is found in a ton of everyday electronic devices, from quartz watches to speakers and microphones in a nutshell. So in the process of using crystals to convert mechanical energy into electrical energy and vice versa, this is, you can see, refers back to the figure 1, the piezoelectric crystal oscillator. The next question is, how do we intend to squeeze these crystals to create mechanical or electrical energy? So further to the internal reactions of the Great Pyramids, we have something else that has been observed, and that is the acoustic phenomenon observed at the Great Pyramid of Giza. So one thing that connects ancient people across the world is music, okay? So acoustic phenomenon has been observed in ancient sites across the world, like the Great Pyramid, Stonehenge, Mayan pyramids. What is interesting is how the acoustics could be used in this theory. As I make in the previous paragraphs, how do we intend to squeeze these crystals? By using acoustic energy or pressure, the pyramid is a giant acoustic chamber that focuses electromagnetic energy, as previously stated in the slides. So in the further points, how this could be achieved under the right conditions. So to go back about acoustic energy slash pressure, this is sound waves, this is harmonics, okay? So when you think heat, think pressure, okay? So sound waves is energy. So the more potential energy, the more pressure, okay? So at the top of the pyramid, there was an alleged missing gold capstone, okay? So this is another metal that should be factored in, but we can't say for certain if it's been described as being there, this gold capstone, but there's no actual proof. There was three of them on all these pyramids in Giza. So this lies more within the realm of myths more so than actuality. But the myth states that the three pyramids were each capped with a golden capstone. This is interesting because gold is a great conductor of electricity, it's non-corrosive material, and that it could have been used to draw heat slash energy within the internal chambers. Heat equals pressure. So as the external polished white limestone reflects the heat energy from the outside atmosphere, the gold capstone would conduct that heat energy into the internal chamber, so allowing the piezoelectric effect to take place. So as the pressure increases internally, it causes the mechanical stress needed to allow current to flow within the circuit. So again, there's more to this, but you need just keep following as I'm going along here. So it is previously stated the estimated volts at the top of the Great Pyramid would lie between 14 6,550 volts to 13,850. Okay, so I'm going to describe Gantabring's door next. Okay, so in 1993, a robot climbed 63 meters through a south-facing channel found in the Queen's Chamber to discover a block with two copper prongs encased in a limestone block. This find was replicated in the north-facing channel, so also found in the Queen's Chamber. So as we know, there's a potential difference at the top of the pyramid. The question on my mind is, what is the potential where the copper prongs door meet the external chamber and from the point of ground? So we have a copper conductor coil running through the pyramid. So all we need now is to induce current, okay? So this is where the Earth's magnetic field will come into play. So in the next slide, there's going to be a wee bit of a diagram, okay? So observe point A is potential difference of 14,650 volts, and point B, and I guess, there's no known elevation of where these copper prongs lie within the structure. So we're going to call B 7,325 volts, okay? So that was an estimate we came up with just as an example for the next figure, okay? So we're observing a volt drop across a resistor, which is V equals I by R, which is the only one observation of Ohm's law here. One observation of Ohm's law. So Ohm's law is VIR, so it's voltage over current multiplied by resistor. So I explained frequency, voltage, and I current earlier on. But for Ohm's law, we need a resistor. So what I'm actually describing is the resistor is the gold capstone, but that's possibly mythological, and then these copper conductors in Gantt stock. That's your and the oscillating mechanism and the internal chamber. This is all part of the actual mechanism, because what I'm trying to describe is the pyramid is a current device. Okay. So below in figure 1 and 2 is the copper prongs hidden in the passageway. This appears to be a part of an electrical circuit using point C will be described as a key function, which is the oscillator, the missing piece. Okay, so Gantt door, there is copper prongs like this fella here in these chambers. So there's one set of copper prongs in here, like this door, and then B is an exact similar copper prong door. So in this little image here, you can actually see, so this internal chamber is here, it goes up, and the copper conductors end in this door. But this copper, where do the copper conductors go? So I said in the previous slide, the golden capstone, okay? So that's 14,000 volts. This is terrible, I'm sorry folks. So that's your 14,000 volts, and that's your 7,000 volts, yeah? 7,000 volts. 14,000 volts is here, okay? This here, gold capstone. So that's your potential difference. Okay. and that's ground, okay? So essentially, what I'm trying to describe is here, we do know that the atmosphere is charged, okay, 400,000 volts. I don't mind, hopefully you don't mind this drawing, but it's the only thing I can do to describe it to you, okay? 400,000, K is 1000 by the way, in case nobody copped that, and volts is V, okay? So 400,000 volts in the atmosphere. We know we have a magnetic field within the atmosphere. So what I'm describing here is this is your coil mechanism. That's your coil here. And this fella here is your mechanical oscillator. Okay? This is your mechanical oscillator and this is your copper coil. So essentially what we're doing here is we are using Earth's magnetic field and atmospheric charge to bring these positively charged electrons down to Earth through the pyramid. Okay? So in the pyramid there's a subterranean chamber which was full of water at one point. So essentially what we are doing here is we are running current through the pyramid. The pyramid is a current device. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. So this is your field. That's your field. That's your magnetic field here. This is what we are observing. So between those 2 points is a potential difference. This is your current device. This is the Earth's atmosphere. Okay? So again, we are using the pyramid as a current device to harness the potential in the atmosphere. So the next slide will describe this. So the missile piece of the puzzle. As noted above about the acoustic phenomenon within the structure, the key missing piece to complete would necessarily be an electrical circuit within the pyramid, given the evidence we have before us, logically would be bronze. So this is the acoustic chamber. So this is the key piece that will make the pyramid essentially ring like a bell, similar to an oscillating mechanism acting as a spark gap, which is what Tesla was utilizing in regard to a steam powered oscillator. So as voltage is passed through point A or point B, left and right, the copper prongs are a copper coiled mechanism. This indicates a mechanism for inductance using Earth's magnetic field, as well as the internal granite quartz chamber and bronze oscillating mechanism acting as a resistor. The chamber begins to heat and ring due to the reaction taking place inside the chamber. Think of the process as a tungsten filament in a light bulb, heating and giving off light. Same logic as what we see here in regard to the quartz and bronze giving off light. So quartz, when struck like that, it's actually called triboluminescence. So quartz will give off light under certain conditions. So again, what I'm describing is the pyramid with the gold capstone, the copper conductors, and the bronze oscillating mechanism. That's your current device. This is how they're using the Earth as a mechanism, okay? So the subterranean chamber is where the water lies. So this is where current is passing through water to generate electrolysis. So in the previous points, I mentioned use of Tesla's steam-powered oscillator. We have an oscillator, but where is the steam? The steam comes to the subterranean chamber. At one stage in history, the River Nile was at a much higher level than we see today. The subterranean chamber was filled with water, which is now being drained. This means that the water from the Nile could not only be acting as a condenser, as a condenser to reject heat, but for the internal reaction, but to fuel it at the same time. So there was fresh water and it's running through a limestone area. Okay, so this fresh water is essentially boiling through this reaction. So think of it again like a kettle or a immersion coil. So what's really happening is as the Earth's current and voltage is running through the pyramid, the pyramid is heating. Okay, so this is what is boiling the water in the internal chamber or the subterranean chamber. So as we know, heat equals pressure. So as the internal pressure increases, it creates mechanical stress within the pyramid. But at the same time, the vapor or the steam wets the quartz rock. So when you wet any rock or wet any material, it will drop its resistance. Okay. So as he says, the internal chamber is the resistor. Okay. So what happens is this water begins to boil, wets the rock. As the pressure increases, the resistance drops, and that's your reaction that's taking place for electrolysis to take effect. So as you see here, so what we are seeing here is the earth electrical current being passed through the earth water to create a natural reaction known as electrolysis. This is the key to production of hydrogen. So the pyramid is heated by the sun and the internal chamber heats, causing the water in the subterranean chamber to heat and evaporate. This is essentially latent heat, given off the piezoelectrical effect to take place. As heat increases, so does the pressure of Boyle's law. This is what mechanical stress. This is the mechanical stress needed to squeeze energy from the quartz crystal in the granite. The voltage is supplied from Earth's own atmosphere, while electric current flows in the chamber due to steam wetting the stone, lowering its resistance, allowing a spark gap reaction or oscillating mechanism for the copper bronze oscillating mechanism or resistor to ring within the chamber, generating frequency that resonates within Earth's own magnetic field, which leads into Tesla's other great invention, Wardenclyffe Tower. The aim of this invention was to use Earth's own field to transmit energy wirelessly. So I don't think it was meant to transmit energy, it was meant to harness energy, okay? So as the mechanism begins to oscillate, it harmonizes the potentially charged electrons and give them a pass a safe path, give them a path to the massive Earth. So from the atmosphere to the ground. Okay, this essentially leads into a realm of what is known as thermoacoustics. So thermoacoustic engines convert heat energy into a high amplitude acoustic waves and subsequently into electric power. Danny from Tesla Pyramids has actually came up with that. That's where I found out about that, and straight up that blew my mind. I was like, yeah, this is it. Um, But the next key point is another observation I made about the pyramid myself. Okay, so the King's Chamber is in interesting anatomy that can essentially be proved as observation is the King's Chamber. It was figured originally that the King's Chamber was designed to make the structure earthquake proof. But given the evidence presented in the paper, one could argue the King's Chamber was designed in fact as an expansion joint device to counteract the heat pressure generated from the thermal reaction in the previously described points. So there is air shafts in the King's Chamber. So we had fresh water that was running through the subterranean chamber. Okay, so it helped provide water, but it helped cool the internal chamber. Okay, and another observation I forgot to mention was the wider limestone plateau of Giza is actual. Now I've been in Egypt, so I've seen this. So there is like massive holes carved into the ground, and the actual pyramids are built on like a limestone plateau. So what I figured they were actually doing was they were using these um, holes into the ground, and what they were doing was they were using blocks to either control the flow of water going through the pyramid, or they were using it to elevate and decrease the water level to control the amount of water flowing through the pyramid. I've can apply this logic to a similar equipment I've worked on, chillers. We can actually use water flow to allow heat exchange to take place. It's quite interesting. But as it says, I don't agree that the King's Chamber was a tomb, regardless if there's a sarcophagus or not. So to me, it was actually an expansion device. It helped deal with the pressure. So as it warmed up, it expanded, and it had air vents in it as well to help release any of the hydrogen. And at the same time, when it cooled down, it went back to its original shape. This is it. It's expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction. Again, it's how nobody has looked at it that way is quite interesting, but I shall carry on. So that is the physical part of the paper described. Okay. So I'm going to go into the bit more of the metaphysical and the ancients and their clues of what was going on. Okay. So the ancients, if you look back to ancient cultures, you see a various curious infatuation with the pine cone and pineal gland. Many depictions of this, but what is the importance of this in regard to this paper? So you have the likes of the Anunnaki from Sumeria, we have the Egyptians depicting the pine cone, and we have Christians depicting the pine cone. So why is the pine cone important? So there is a giant bronze pine cone, okay, that's surrounded by two peacocks, right, in the Vatican. So what if the 2,000-year-old bronze pine cone that lies in the Vatican courtyard we see in the above photo is the missing piece of the puzzle, as stated in the previous page in the paper? Ironically, it's not as if a fountain wouldn't fit in the image. And also, if you observe the Osiris seal, the pine cone that is flanked by what appears to be two serpents, on closer examination of these two figures, they appear to be more like two birds, just like we see the two peacock at the Vatican fountain. The tails, in fact, being the copper conductors previously described as part of the mechanism that makes the pyramid ring like a bell. The pine cone being the bronze oscillator. The pine cone is also said to be the seat of the human soul. So think peacock, Osiris, pine cone, pineal gland. They all relate to the third or the all-seeing eye. Okay. So this image you see here is within the Queen's chamber. So when I was actually in Egypt, I didn't get to see this. Unfortunately, I was sick. I didn't. But as you can see, there's this weird void. This is the void I want you to pay attention here. See him? That void is very interesting. There's other pictures here where you can see part of this floor is being removed, okay? And this guy here is your reference. So he's about 5-6 feet tall. So you can estimate that actual void be about 13-14 feet. So figure one, man inside the Queen's chamber, as reference said, the Vatican pine cone would not look out of place in here. So this is where the bronze oscillating mechanism or frequency drive would sit. What is happening is the electrical arc from the copper bronze mechanism drives the spark to drive the reaction within the chamber. So that's your spark gap or your oscillating mechanism. It makes one think when we talk to human beings, consciousness, we talk to the divine spark. What if this is the great spark, but in a physical representation? So the bronze pine cone represents the human pineal gland. The pineal gland is, from the current understanding, the seat of human consciousness. So is the bronze pine cone the fabled Ark of the Covenant? It's not an actual ark, but an electrical arc. So the next image, we're going to look at close up of the pine cone and the sort of Osiris, staff of Osiris. So staff of Osiris is the pine cone and serpents. So it's not unlike we see in the Vatican. So the pine cone equals bronze oscillator and the peacock equals the copper conductor. So this is what I'm describing here. There's your copper conductor. There's your peacocks. And note his head. Something about his head there. That is a mechanism. That's the pine cone. Okay? Now, if you look at the Vatican pine cone, it equals an oscillator, peacock, conductor, flanked by Egyptian lions, possibly fountain of youth, Holy Grail linked here also. So that's your fountain. There's the Egyptian lions. Peacock, that's your copper conductor. That's your copper conductor. This is your oscillating mechanism. Okay? If that makes sense. That's your oscillator right there. That belongs in the Queen's chamber, in my opinion. Okay? So the next oddity that is I'm going to make a point of in regards to this is where this pine cone fountain is in the great in the Vatican. So the King's chamber. So I've actually been in this chamber. It's quite interesting. So another curious anomaly to note is the King's chamber sarcophagus is missing a lid, as seen below. So behind the pine cone in the Vatican courtyard lies a lid of a sarcophagus and other objects. Okay, so this is missing the lid. That's your point cone from the Queen's chamber. But here is a lid off a sarcophagus. I can't get great pictures of this. I'm actually going to have to go to Rome at some stage and see if I can see that sarcophagus lid, okay? But an image here that shows that's a sarcophagus lid. Again, I'd have to go there to get it, okay? But it's very difficult to get a good image of that sarcophagus lid. But given all the curiosity surrounding these facts in this paper, at what stage does it no longer be coincidental? So we have a point cone that looks like it can fit in the Queen's chamber. We have a sarcophagus lid that looks like it could be missing from the King's chamber. We have the staff of Osiris that has a point cone, and it looks like it's being flanked by two birds, as in not females, but two birds with wings. That's a bad joke. Anyway, so that's 1, 2, 3 coincidences. Okay, so in my research, I've been, I've mentioned the likes of the Phoenicians and stuff like that. So the Phoenicians would have been all over North Africa, likely in Egypt. They obviously had a connection to Ireland as well. So in this next slide, this is a Phoenician funeral stele. Now observe, we have this hand symbol. Okay, we have these two birds. Okay, may not be related to anything, but what is going on here? This is a pyramid surrounded by two towers. These look like some sort of mechanisms. To me, this looks like some sort of switchgear. Like as it says, you can see two towers and you can see a pyramid. What is going on up here? Okay, and this isn't the only sample of such a stele. Okay, we're going to remove all this. Pause this as you want. This is a Phoenician funeral stele, or it's directly related to Tanit. So she was a god in Phoenician mythologies. This next stele is the same thing. We have a pyramid, we have two towers, and then we have whatever this mechanism is. I don't know. I don't know what way to describe that apart from what I'm actually describing in this theory. But to me, this looks like some sort of technology. And what's interesting about the flower could relate to the flower of life. If anyone who's known into sacred geometry will know about this. So, to get to the part about human brain. So, as described in previous sections with regard to the steam powered oscillator, this is the same vein as the frequency drive. The frequency is driven off the heat of the sun and the chemical reaction within the chamber. This is driven by the bronze point cone. The chamber heats, the higher the frequency. As the chamber cools, the frequency is lowered. The human consciousness is said to be driven by the pineal gland, and the pineal gland is the point cone depicted by the ancients. Therefore, did the ancients leave us clue to operate this ancient power plant? So as you can see here is actual brain waves. So as it says, hertz, frequency. Humans generate the frequency via the brain. It's called human. This is where they say about human consciousness. So as you can see, you got delta, theta, alpha, beta, gamma brain waves. Okay. So as it says, I've already described acoustic sine waves. I've mentioned hertz, which is again sine waves, but in an oscillating mechanism. So as you can see, gamma is the heightened perception, learning, problem solving, task, cognitive processing. Beta is awake, alert, consciousness, thinking, excitement. Alpha, physically and emotionally relaxed, creativity, insight, deep states, dreams, deep meditation, reduced consciousness. And then delta waves, so deep sleep, loss of. So this is all not new information. Everybody knows about brain waves. Okay, this is not new. I'm just presenting that as my idea. Okay, so as we stand on Earth, the resonant frequency is 7.83 hertz. Do we lie in this theta zone? So, if, as described in this paper, the Great Pyramid is in fact an oscillating frequency drive, what, if any, effect could this have on human consciousness? Would this be Tesla's answer to the problem of increasing human energy? And if he turned this power onto this machine, could this be the fabled connection with the gods that was lost with the Atlanteans, the mind boggles? So we're coming towards the end of this presentation, but I want to show you something I found in the book. Okay, so as you know, my other theories, I've references the likes of Chronicles of Early, Iron Order the Chaldee, the Lara Gabala Earl, and them books. But I've also been using this book, Irish Wisdom Preserved in the Pyramids. So I formed my theories from discussing the history theories with the likes of Linda and beyond research and discussing with other people and information online. So I read Irish Wisdom in the Pyramids in May 24. So just to see what it says here. So I was in Egypt May 2024, got to see the pyramids, Luxor, etc. in all clarity. Whilst on the flight over, I read a book I'd known about and found a pleasant surprise. So when I found this theory when I was in college learning electrical theory, I figured that for all the pyramid power theories to work, all they needed was a coil conductor, i.e. Ganter Brings door, and an acoustic material, i.e. bronze, which led me to identify the bronze point cone as the missing piece. So if you can read where the lines say, so the physio spirituality or the pyramid of Isa represents the region of the head. For here is located the brain, which is the seat of the rational intelligence, and also it contains the clusters or groups of nerve sensors, which, when aroused and vitalized by the perseverance and conscious effort of the aspirant, gives him light and wisdom through the medium of which he finally attains to spiritual perfection or rise at the fullness of his godlike powers. These nerve centers in a man in which the spiritual potency is slumbering are said to be dead or atrophied, such as the pineal gland, back of the frontal bone or of the forehead. This gland, when it is awakened, becomes the spiritual eye of the seer. So, as I said, so I read this book in May 24, and I I came up with the pineal gland part of this theory in 2017. So when I read this book, it was actually near the last page, my eyes nearly popped out of my head, and I was like, I cannot believe a book written in the 1920s or 1920s that it mentions the pyramid. So it calls the Great Pyramid the Pyramid of Giza, but it called it the human brain. So I think it's quite mad that in the space of 100 years, you have two Irish people. One discusses the pyramid as the brain, relation to the brain, and I found information that makes it look like it is actually the human brain. It's nuts. So as it says, the pineal gland is the point cone, is the seat of the human soul, as described in these earlier images. So again, this exact image is why I wanted to publish this, because there's no doubt that there's something to this. So this is why I wanted to release it, so people can make up their own minds. Now, the Irish Wisdom Preserved in the Pyramids, not only does it confirm my pyramid theory, but if you read this book, it talks about the same stuff I mentioned in regards to the out of the Atlantic theory. Now, those are all my own ideas, but each time, each find, I find more and more information that points to these theories being correct. But again, people can make up their minds as they so please. But I want to make a point in this next slide. So, dimethyltryptamine is a powerful psychedelic that is known as the spirit molecule. It is known that the ancients were used as psychedelics all across the ancient world via the likes of magic mushrooms, psychedelic toads, vines, and like those used in ayahuasca. So what has been noted about this drug, apart from the powerful hallucinations, is the buzzing high-pitched frequency in the brain whilst under its influence. Tryptamines are generally said to be the effect according to Terence Buchanan's documentary True Hallucinations. So are psychedelics what inspired all these ancient structures in the ancient world? Because they were an ancient interconnected society, but something's been lost, something's happened that we don't know what's after happening. But I believe this to be the case. So I had actually smoked DMT in 2017, and this is actually the inspiration of my theory. So I'd oddly seen a lot of interesting stuff, but it's a different story how this became. But this is how what led to the inspiration. So in conclusion, I say, given what I presented in this paper, I believe this warrants a review of everything we've been taught in regard to ancient civilizations and warrants the build of a prototype to test this theory. There is going to be no doubt dissenters to what I present from mainstream archaeology and historians, but who are adamant this machine is a tomb and built by slaves. But hopefully people see this theory and it ignites something within them to question these false narratives. Okay? So I just want to say thanks very much for taking the time to listen to this or read this theory. If anyone likes, let me know what you think. As is, I think I think the as it says, if you look at it, all the pyramid is doing is inducing current, and as it says, it's a current device. So people really need to start asking questions and having to think about what's going on here, folks. But anyway, I'm gonna end it on that. There will be more videos. I just said I'd do this just to keep you entertained. Thanks very much, folks.